Hello, everyone. Happy President's Day. Happy Family Day here in Ontario. And welcome to the Ion Canon podcast, your home on the Star Wars Underworld podcast network for in depth discussion on the lore, the High Republic, and the whole canon of the galaxy far, far away. My name is Matthew, and I'm coming to you from the Underworld North Studio in Toronto, where we celebrated Family Day. As always, I'm joined across the continent by your friend and mine, Mr. Joel Davis in Underworld Orange County, where they had President's Day, apparently. Joel, how are you doing on this fine long weekend?
I wonder if they have Chancellor's Day in the Republic. Like they have a day just to celebrate all the chancellors.
They probably do. I mean, we know
And
they had Empire Day.
Palpatine Day. Well, every day is Palpatine
Every
Day in
day
the
is
Empire.
every day is Palpatine Day, but
Mhm.
especially Ezra's birthday.
Yes.
There we go. This week, realize we could have done something on presidents or chancellors, could have done something on family. Instead, we're talking about death. There we go.
If this were Legend, we'd be talking about Chief of State Day, because that's what the
Chief
New
of State.
Republic called it.
There we go.
Mhm.
Yeah, but this week instead we're talking because it's also the Monday after the first Sunday in Lent. So we were talking about life, death, and decay that feeds new life, warmth, cold, peace, violence.
The
Ash Wednesday and
circle
the
of
week. There you
life.
go. Yeah, yeah, the circle of life. There it is. So Ash Wednesday and the weeks that follow are a time to reflect on mortality, life, and the struggle for meaning. Star Wars very often grapples with these themes as well, notably through its storytelling and through its characters. It's one of the big ideas that Star Wars has always grappled with since 1977. So this week we give you an extended Theology Time Lent edition. Before we do that, got a bunch of things to get through, including plugs. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at Iron Cannon Pod, EYEONCANONPOD. Here on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel, we got memberships, we got super chats, we got comments in the comment section, we got all that fun stuff. So please do chime in, and with the super chat you support the channel and go to the top of the list in terms of things we address, in terms of answering your question, etc., etc. Also, the Star Wars Underworld Discord server, Joel and I are in there chatting all things Star Wars, chatting all things Marvel, Star Trek, who knows what. I got a bit of a soccer stream in there too, channel in there too, if you want to chime in there. So yeah, check the link down below. Joel, what kind of events are going on in the Discord server these days?
Last week we had a fun round of Overwatch with some of our friends. This week we'll be taking a break, and next week we haven't decided yet, but I'm leaning towards another continuation of our marathon, so we can watch more Young Jedi adventures.
Yeah.
Yay!
On that note, this should have made sense in the week in Star Wars, but I did watch the Young Jedi Adventures episodes where they go to Batu.
Cool.
Very very interesting little Galaxy's Edge nostalgia there for me. Also this week, Wednesdays are for comics. Comics are for Wednesdays. Chris Abbott and I every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Dive into whatever comics came out that day. So comics of course come out on Wednesdays, and so this week there's just one book ongoing, number 43. The end of that weird Luke Kyber Crystal Sith thing happening. So what we're also going to do is talk, because we want to talk about Bad Batch, because we want to. Again, it's coming out. I'll get to that very shortly in a little bit, but yeah, check that out right here on the Underworld YouTube channel and everywhere else. We spread our love around here, our podcast love around on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube or podcast network, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, etc. Yeah, right here, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, Wednesdays. So it should be a good show. We've had a good run so far. So yeah, and also by the way, one last plug for our interview with Ethan Sachs from a week and a half ago. That went really well. Please do check that out. Right, yeah, again, right here on the Underworld YouTube channel, and also on the Ion Cannon Spotify feed. I made an exception to bring that in. I'm going to start doing that more often, very very soon. Some things very right around the corner. Just some changes to our social media presence and some other things. So stay tuned for that. We'll make a fun announcement about that. But that'll include putting Tractor Beam on the Spotify and Apple Podcasts feed as well. So yeah, speaking of which, if audio is your speed, I mean, welcome to watching the live video right now. But if you prefer an audio only version of the Iron Cannon podcast, go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and search Iron Cannon, and it should get this logo here, ringed in blue, this marketing guy, and yeah, that should have will have all of our episodes from the last 2+ years, all 99 of our episodes, from the
99, Clone Force 99.
Clone Force 99. There we go.
Perfect
So
before the Bad Batch. Yay.
yeah, good timing, great timing there. So yeah, so yeah, check that out, and we'd be honored if you would join us. Alrighty, our week in Star Wars. Yeah, it's been a week. Joel, take her away.
Right. So for this week, I found an interesting thread by a Mr. at from on Twitter by Mr. Jaden at, or I don't know, they could be them, at just Jade3N underscore. If they are somehow watching this, please feel free to comment below. I always feel a little weird reading people's Twitter thoughts without, like, if they have chance to rebuttal. But anyway,
Yeah.
it's a particular. But you know, if you're in the comments, or if you want to just, if you ever want to come on the show too, always happy. Anywho, it's an interesting thread about the Mortis arc, and a bit of a counter to our mostly positive thoughts from we did it. So I thought I would read a little bit of it. I don't know if I'll be able to get the whole thing, but I'll try to get the important parts. So let's go. A thread on the Mortis arc. This is the thread, by the way, and why I don't really like it, nor its implications on the Force, and some ideas I had around it. After rewatching the arc, I don't particularly like that the arc's implications on the will of the Force, because, like at first, I assume people misinterpreted people seeing the daughter as the embodiment of the light side and the son as the embodiment of the dark side. But when actually rewatching the arc, it became very clear that the arc doesn't do a good enough job to properly represent that in a way that lines up with what balance in the Force should be, and points to reinforce that belief that means equilibrium between light and dark. This scene with the father kind of sums up a lot of why I think the arc failed to convey the balance, because rather than the idea of the natural cycle of life and decay, we'll get to later, the writer choose light and dark sides of the Force, which hold the different meaning than the natural circle of life. And I don't, I said that, not him.
Yeah.
And I don't like the sides of the Force being an equal. I like sides of the Force being an equal, being the concept of balance, because throughout the film, the light side has always been shown to be balanced, the symbiosis of living cosmic force, with wielders of the light surrendering themselves to the will of the Force. On the opposite end of is the dark side. Has been about imbalance. The mere existence of the dark side user is a challenge against the balance, because it's an individual not drawing on the Force, but imparting its will on it, and shows the effects of the person Sandy doing this. Little picture of Anakin getting all mad and Palpatine's wrinkly face. So having an arc that portrays the symbiosis of the Force being light and dark seems really weird, and kind of misunderstanding of the Force that could have been easily changed from life and decay and those aspects of the light side of the Force. Nice little video of Luke and Rey from Last Jedi. I'm sure we'll talk about that later. I think it would have been cool to represent the daughter of order and control, and life with the sun as passion and chaos. Decay, the aesthetic of the sun doesn't look obviously bleak and evil and Sith-like from the start. I also think it's really important to make clear that the sun is not the embodiment of the dark side that needed to be balanced within the light, but was the embodiment of passion and natural chaos that over time fell to the dark side. It's also important to show why both the daughter and the son without other will have a logical endpoint, dark side imbalance. Let me just make sure.
It goes on.
It goes on a little bit. Let me just make sure. Let's see. They talk about the other stuff. Past, maybe let's see. Talked a little about, doesn't really, okay. Prophecy. Oh, we go. I'll just go feel to the end. Sorry, Jaden, by the way, if you do listen to this, if you feel like I should have read the rest, again, you are always happy to comment. Heck, if you even want to come on the show, maybe we can schedule something.
Yeah.
If you're listening, or if someone points this out to you, we are happy to have you on. Overall, I think the arc is interesting conceptually, and I like the stories that delve into the cosmic Force, but I think just in execution, the arc failed to understand the Force itself, as it's both too vague, but somehow too simple in presentation. All right. I'm gonna take some water. You can talk now.
Yeah. So what's interesting there is I mean, I agree, and I will get to this later on for the main topic. I agree in what he says about what the balance of the Force is. I mean, I've said this multiple times. It isn't some equal light, equal dark, like even Luke says. It's the light being free and the dark being constrained, and so it's true on a surface level that that scene with the father and Anakin, that father are trying to get Anakin to replace him, is like hold the two together. It makes me think, though. I mean, on the one hand, oh, not on the one hand, at one level, Mortis is symbol, it's mythos, it's allegory. Here's that word. Um, it is meant to be. It is going to be vague enough that we're never going to have a definitive answer of what's happening, because what's more important is for us to have these discussions and think things through and work things through and see what we bring to it. Um, like this thing, there's many different possibilities of what this arc is, right? What I will say is this Twitter thread gets me to think about is, what if what's happening there, what the father has tried to do, it's very clear one of the things he's tried to do is restrain the son. It's very
Mhm.
clear that it's very much, the son has a part to play in this cycle of life and death and decay. I mean, that's the thing. And again, I'll get to this later, but you know, the weird thing about Mortis is that a day goes through a year or whatever, and everything dies at night and then comes back to life. And again, the Last Jedi goes into why that's important. Again, I'll
Mhm.
get to this later on, but all I'll say is the son is there, but he's restrained. I wonder if with the daughter, it's the fault. It's that she's beloved and free, and needs to be free and supported in order for her to have free reign to bring balance to the galaxy. That's what balance is. And so, uh, yeah, I see what they're saying in this thread. Yeah, I mean, it could lead to the very kind of the partisan interpretation of just holding things. It's got to be one or the other. This actually gets at another thing we'll get at later, is the flaws of the Jedi and the light side and the dark. And um, yeah, it could lead to that interpretation. But yeah, I mean, that's the funny thing about this arc, especially, is it's what you bring into it. So I don't know if I see the criticism. I don't think it's as sharp. It warrants as sharp a one. It's Twitter. I get that, but yeah, that's my response. Just probably because I enjoyed the arc so much, and I actually do see that happening. And my guess is we'll get some richer sense, hopefully something in Ahsoka season 2 about
Cross
what's
fingers.
happening there. Obviously, again, they're never gonna come out and say this is what this means, this is what this is. Rebels, was a Rebel season 3 or season 4, whatever it was, started gave us a little bit more with Sabine and the archetypes. But yeah, I'm okay. I'm good with it, but I get what I get the criticism.
Well, I'll be very interested to see what Ahsoka season 2 brings, because I've always sort of had my suspicions, especially, well, now I have my suspicions, but back then I wasn't quite sure. But now I have my suspicions of, like, I feel like Dave might be doing like a redux of Immortus, but in live action to kind of. But I do wonder if, like, looking
Interesting.
back on it, it's like, okay, what did we do? What could we done better? And now we can kind of really smoothen out. I mean, that Morris was 2010, this is 2020.
Yeah.
8 by the time, so he's had some time to mull over. But yes, I just wanted to share that. Thank you
Yeah.
again, Jaden.
Great food
He
for
is
thought.
him.
I'll say that. Great food for
And
thought.
if this comes across your attention again, feel free to comment or
Hmm.
even leave a message with us. We are always happy for talk and debate because that's the
Sure.
fun of it. So
Right.
yeah, that's my week of Star
Um,
Wars. That's one thread. What was your week of Star Wars?
my weekend Star Wars. I'm still reading through Escape from Valhalla. I uh, gotta get that finished before. Um, we're gonna have this in the notes. I have it in the notes. Uh, the next book is coming out. Defy the Storm. Uh,
And
yeah,
I can't read Escape from Valhalla because it's not on
that's
Audible.
true. That's so bizarre.
I
I
don't
don't
know.
understand that. Come on, Amazon,
I
stop being
don't
this
know.
way. Yeah. So yeah, and so I'm about halfway through Escape from Valhalla. Which, I mean, it's the junior reader, but it's a chunky junior reader. It's a long junior reader.
Hmm.
It's interesting, John Moran, his character, when we last see him in Tales of Light and Life, and he's still not very self-aware. He's still kind of bumbling. Uh, but then, I mean, this is before this Fall of Starlight Beacon. I guess that one's set kind of before Phase 1. No, it's set during phase one. Or yeah, and so they're on Starlight and whatnot. So then there's the fall of Starlight, and there's a year later, and uh, he's back on Valo, and yeah, it's very clear they need to cast him. He's the older character. He's still technically a Padawan because everything gets on hold
Mhm.
with the fall of Starlight. Although the Guardian protocols, they just haven't caught up to him. It's fascinating to see yet another character shift that they've written in, that they've thought about how in this case he finds these three younglings who were part of the Valo temple,
Mhm.
and he's the one who has to actually instill confidence and lead, will also be relatable and say, I don't fully know what I'm doing, what's happening, but I know enough and I have enough experience to be able to organize things, to welcome things, and to uh just gather these kids together and probably motivate them on the way. The kids, they're very capable too because they're Jedi.
Of course.
But
Them Jedi
and they're
kids.
Jedi in this era, which is saying something too. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. Yeah, Skip Novello by who wrote this book? Um, why am I blanking on who wrote this book? Is it George Mann? No, it's not George Mann. I think it's Justina Ireland. And it's sorry, Daniel Jose Older and Alyssa Wong. I don't know why I blanked on that, but yeah, that I get one per month, one per week, right? One blank per week. Skip Bell, but Daniel Jose Older and Alyssa Wong. A lot of things that come back from comics and whatnot that they've written before. So enjoying it. Gotta finish it. Gotta finish it before Defy the Storm comes out. Yeah, it's weird that they don't have it on audio. I don't know, Joe. From what I've said, from what you've heard, what are you thinking so far with Escape from Valor?
It seems interesting. Some of the characters kind of pass over me because I don't remember
Yeah,
many of them, to be quite honest. But I would love to read it, and regardless, but I can't because it's not an audible. Which one is the next one? Is that the young adult or that
yeah. Defy the Storm's doing it all one. That's
okay?
coming out March 5th. So
What's fifth?
yeah, yeah.
All
It is.
right.
That is so weird. I don't. I mean, it's got to be some business reason or something. They're not doing that, but
Yeah.
who knows?
Sucks.
Sometimes. All right. Let's move right along, droning the podcast area for a little bit here. Yeah, as Joe mentioned, Bad Batch is. I got the ticker up. Guys. 1 day, 6 hours, 10 minutes, and 16 seconds away from dropping on Disney Plus.
Woo!
I guess that's unfortunately means it's going to be midnight Pacific and not. I really like the 6 p.m. Pacific drops because that meant on Tuesdays because that meant 9 p.m. Eastern on on Tuesdays, and just come home and chill and watch the episodes. That'll be even better for these animated episodes. I think would be just a nice chill Tuesday evening. But nope, I gotta find some time during lunch or dinner to watch these things because it's a 3 episode premiere of the Bad Batch. Yeah, I'll say I've only done a rewatch of one episode, and it was the Solitary Clone because I wanna the Cody Crosshair episode from season 2. It's such a great episode. But also I don't know who was saying this. Maybe Dom or Alex from Star Wars Explained. Someone was saying that the season's twin pillars. It's going to be Omega, of course, but
Mhm.
also Crosshair. Going to have a
Yeah.
lot to do, a lot character to do, given that he was kind of on the sidelines for the first 2 seasons, a little bit. Season 2 with the Solitary Clone, he really has this shift, uh, has the come to Jesus moment, if you will. And so, yeah, looking forward to that dropping Wednesday at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, which is what it is. We'll figure it out. Yeah, Joel, are you gonna stay up till midnight to watch this? And
Maybe not. I don't know. I might
yeah,
sleep in and just watch it in the morning. I'm pretty
yeah,
good enough at avoiding
that's
being
fair.
able to. So yeah, but
Yeah,
let's any
I
last
was gonna
minutes.
ask you this.
Oh,
What do you got? Any lasting minute
okay,
predictions, speculations?
okay. Let me see. Let's throw out a wild one. Let's throw out a wild one
Mhm.
just cause. Let's throw out a Quinlan Voss cameo. Cause why
It's
not?
not that wild.
Sarge coming back. Um.
She's coming back.
Also,
He's probably coming back.
we thinking yay or nay on Omega being force sensitive? She got an M count, got a high M
I
count.
think something like that. Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
it'll be my guess. I mean, there's again. I keep saying this. They're not going to tell us outright, but there is.
I mean, they might tell us outright that she has an high M count.
Well, they might tell us that, but they're not going to tell us outright that this is leading to Snoke's in a jar, right? This is leading to Exegol. But just like with Grogu, I mean, there might be something to do with Grogu. We'll see. But
let's see. Yeah, let's see.
Skywalker stay absolutely force sensitive. Trying to think.
What else?
Anyone?
Who do you think? Well, no. We can talk about this later. But do you think any of the batch? Think all the batch going to die? You think they're going to live it? They think they're going to make it out?
I think they can make it out. I think they're okay.
Okay, let's hope so.
For the most part.
Except for Tech. Tech is.
Yeah, well, Tech. I don't know. The Tech can Tech come back? We'll see.
No, that's true. I mean, I don't know, man. They're talking like he's dead in the producing
and
interview.
That would be a better story, just for to say, okay, a real lament of his death. Yeah, it's a good question. Do we think Ahsoka shows up in this?
Good question. I don't know. I've been kind of surprised. I'm gonna say no.
Yeah.
Because this isn't. This has people say this isn't really. This is like okay, hang on. Okay. This is.
Story.
Oh no, this isn't a Dave Filoni story, and what I mean by that is he's not that involved in the show compared to like say Ahsoka and the Mandoverse. Like this is kind of like he's producing it, but I feel like he's very hands off in terms of like the direction and stuff. Outside of like maybe like, hey, we're gonna do this in the Mandoverse, so maybe can you set this up here? But I don't know. I feel like Ahsoka might not show up in this one.
I do think. I mean, a better shout would be say Bail Organa or Mon Mothma.
Ooh, yeah. Didn't Bail already show up in season 2?
I don't think Bail did. I think there was speculation. Wasn't there speculation that Rex was actually Bail? I don't know.
Oh yeah. I don't. No. I thought Bail showed up in the Senate episodes.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. But like okay, fair enough. Something more like
maybe Mon Mothma. She wasn't in there.
Yeah,
though.
But like coalition of the thousand, not the willing.
Delegation of the 2000.
That group and delegation of 2000. Maybe. I mean, maybe Chuchi has something to do with that. We're definitely gonna see Chuchi.
I hope so. I hope so.
She had a huge role playing.
Oh, I guess
pretty big role, I should say.
I guess we gotta talk about maybe the OG clone himself. Are we going to see young Boba?
Yeah, I think. Well, it'd be a good spread. I wouldn't be surprised, especially because Omega. I mean, Alpha and Omega, right? I mean, there's the two unaltered ones, and given that their lives have taken such different trajectories at this point,
that would be interesting if we get Boba. I mean, we're definitely going to see bounty hunters, so maybe we'll see Boba. I can't think of anything else to speculate about except.
We see Palpatine. No, wait, we saw him in the trailer.
we could see Snoke.
Well, here's what do you think? The security of the Empire means, like, what's he referring to there?
That's a good question because, the gut instinct is my immortality because I don't want to die. But what do you think is like? I wonder what the front plan is to all this because I don't know, man. Maybe mind controlled clones, but we kind of already had that with the chips.
I mean, or just everything to do with Tantus. I mean, we know the batch is gonna stage a rescue for Omega and Crosshair on Tantus, and so Tantus' security is at risk. And I do think, again, I don't think we're gonna say this is this Snoke in a jar thing. We probably won't get anything to do with Grogu, but we will get a sense of why Tantus is so important. Yeah. I mean, we should. I mean, that seems to just track with everything we've seen. So,
do you think we'll get enough episodes of Crosshair and the Batch reconciling if Crosshair's going to be pulling the redemption and get some atonement? Atonement would be nice. Thank you.
I'm gonna go on the speculation here. Cat and Boba capture Omega.
Mm-hmm.
Crosshair rejoins the batch to go and rescue Omega, but
And then,
Omega is able to rescue herself somewhat.
ooh, I like that.
I'm just
I would hope so. Get some awkward reconciliation between Hunter and Crosshair, and like
yeah.
some Crosshair
Are we,
maybe realizing he did lots of bad things.
are we gonna see Hunter actually be using his skills as opposed to what we saw? Because I was watching a recap and how it went into the Clone Wars arc in season 7 and how he can track things in the planet on the surface, and we never see that much at all, which is fine. I mean, he has other narrative roles to play, but
Right.
yeah.
Should you rewatch the pilot, The Aftermath, which is like a mini movie? It's really good.
Yeah,
And it's got
yeah,
Revenge of the Sith moments, so that's cool.
it does.
But yeah,
Mhm.
excitement and I mean, if
Mhm.
this has kind of been speculated about, but like if Omega has the Force, she got
Mhm.
the high M count.
Yeah.
We are about to see a Force sensitive perhaps help out in a witchy Dathomirian way.
Mhm.
It would be cool if Omega and Asajj maybe got some stuff to do.
Yeah. Maybe. I mean, maybe. Just again, more speculating. The whole "I wasn't going to kill you." Maybe that involves Boba
Maybe that
or Cad Bane. I mean, you know,
they would know each other, so they
and
were old
and
allies.
obviously that means that she doesn't actually end up killing either of them because she can't. But they're already alive. They're still
Oh
alive.
yeah,
Well,
oh
like
yeah.
in a show called The Book of Boba Fett.
Oh, yeah.
So
So,
yeah,
but yeah, Bad Batch tomorrow. Even though it's Wednesday,
yeah,
even though I'll probably watch it Wednesday, but still, hooray! I'm excited.
yeah,
Bring it
yeah.
on.
Well, about midnight. So yeah, midnight. Let's. I'll bring the counter back up. See what we got here. Let's bring this counter back up.
Doop, doop.
Uh, 1 hour, 1 day, 6 hours, 1 minute and 0 seconds.
Let's
So 0 minutes and 2 seconds.
go.
So coming up to 1 day and 6 hours, 30 hours. I can do math, guys. 30 hours away
Let's
from Bad
go.
Batch
The
season 3.
Star Wars TV hiatus is going to end, and weeks
Yes,
of Star Wars on screen. It's going to be good.
there we go. Yeah. Quick note. I'm certain the flagship is going to be chatting all about these. Like I mentioned, Tractor Beam is also gonna. We're just gonna go into because we only got one book on Wednesday, so we're gonna go into Bad Batch. If I've had time to watch it yet, is another question.
Oh,
But
aren't? Oh, yeah, that's right. Wednesday, duh.
yeah, so yeah, and then definitely Thursday, the flagship, right here on the Star Wars Underworld podcast is gonna be chatting all about the Bad Batch for sure. So stay tuned for that. All right, one little bit of news, small little bit of news. It's a big deal in Bookland here on in Paper Canon Land. High Republic, Avar and Elzar in Lerv. Yeah,
Lurd.
precisely on Valentine's Day.
They make you
StarWars.com.
kissy face.
They're gonna suck face. Precisely on Valentine's Day last week, StarWars.com give us a description and cover of the next Phase 3 adult novel, Temptation of the Force by Tessa Gratton. I'll bring that cover up. Look at that beautiful cover by Grant Griffin, who, by the way, also worked on Art of High Republic down there, if you can see it. I know the screen's kind of tiny, but yeah, check out this beautiful cover by Grant Griffin. And I'll just read the description out. It's sit tight. It's a fun one. The reunited Jedi prepare to strike back against the ruthless Nihil in this thrilling sequel to Star Wars: The High Republic, The Eye of Darkness. For over a year, Jedi Masters Avar Kriss and Elzar Mann were kept apart by the Nihil storm wall. After Avar makes a daring escape from inside the Occlusion Zone, the Star-Crossed Jedi are reunited. But while the physical distance between them has evaporated, their shared grief over their failure to protect the galaxy from the Nihil threat still remains. To rally the Jedi Order and the Republic, Avar and Elzar cling to their belief in serving light and life. Working together, they lead a daring mission into Nihil space to liberate the planet of Naboo and show those trapped behind the storm wall that the Jedi will never abandon them. Well, we're going back to Naboo. So happy. Now back within close orbit of one another, the two Jedi Masters can no longer deny the bond that has always drawn them back together and made them stronger. After finally embracing their true desires and imbued with renewed purpose, glorious purpose, Eivor and Elzar devise a plan to turn the tide of the conflict with the Nile once and for all. Accompanied by Jedi Knights Bel Zettifar, Buryaga, and Vernestra Rowe, the Jedi begin their hunt for Markian Rowe. But to seek out the Nile's dangerous leader, the Jedi will have to survive the nameless terrors that they have thus far been powerless to stop. So it sounds like they're going back to.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, it sounds like, oh, sorry. Like they're going back to back inside the occlusion zone. There we go. Yeah, fun times. It's gonna be interesting how I know with the High Republic Adventures they've figured out a way to get through somewhat. Anyways, in the article, Grattan herself teased some things that'll be featured in the book, discussions about the nature of the Force and the role of the Jedi in the galaxy, forbidden Jedi romance, banter, daring lightsaber duels, the generations old Graf Santeca feud. The Santecas, of course, of Naboo, by the way. A messy Elzar, ever any lore, and hints about the history of the Rowe family and the hit mysteries of the Nameless, things that were seeded in Phase 2 get to blossom. Oh my word. Oh my word.
Very fun.
This looks spectacular. I can't contain myself. I gotta say, Temptation of the Force, it kicks off Wave 2 of Phase 3 on June 11th, 2024. Again, I don't like it's everything I love, everything I want. All just crammed into one adult novel, and of course, Jedi sucking face, which is interesting. I don't know, but the implications of that. We'll see Jedi Master sucking face, which is even more.
Still weird that Naboo's under the Nile control, though. That's a weird one for me.
Well, it's interesting because I mean the Santecas, I mean with everything that happened on Jedha, right? They kind of both the Grafs and the Santecas are kind of adjacent. I guess it's the Santecas who are in with the Path of the Open Hand. So,
if they really wanted to capitalize on this, the Santecas fall and the Jedi get help from none other than House Palpatine.
Yes, that'll be interesting.
Where's House Palpatine?
That's what I've heard. Is the speculation is that there might be a name drop here. Just thinking about the Santecas, that they, I mean, at this period, well, even in The Force Awakens, when we see one, he hands a map to Luke Skywalker. They're cartographers. They're all about hyperspace lanes and hyperspace paths. So, of course, the Nile are all about hyperspace lanes and hyperspace paths and different things. They have these path engines that can get them through the storm wall. So all that. I gotta say also, everything that Tessa Grattan has touched in High Republic has been gold. Short Quest for Planet X. A Closed Fist Has No Claws, which is the Martyr Rose story in Tales of Light and Light. Oh yeah, and Path of Deceit with Justina Ireland, which introduced us to the one of the greatest characters of all time, Martyr Rowe, and the Path of the Open Hand itself, one of the most interesting factions in all of Star Wars. I'm not exaggerating. I actually love it that much. So yeah, really, really stoked for this. Again, the more I think about it, the more I read it. It's kind of too bad this didn't come out last week when we did our episode on shipping, but we were going to mention Avar and Elzar, but I just didn't have time. But we'll definitely be able to next
year. Hooray! Or next year's Valentine's Day episode.
Yeah, why not? And so yeah, in Temptation, it's sort of part 2 of a Grattan doubleheader because as we mentioned, Defy the Storm, which is the Wave 1 young adult novel with Justina Ireland, that's on March 5th. So I got to finish Escape from Valo. But yeah, after all this, and on another side note, just the tangent, I mean, the young reader novels, I don't quite know how important they will be to the overall thing. If you will have had to read that before reading Temptation of the Force, I don't
think you should have to read it. I don't think you never need to read any of them, to be fair.
True. If you have read that, well, yeah, but really, I mean, they do intertwine a lot more. Not as much with the young readers is kind of my point. Anyways, just going ahead to June, Temptation of the Force, Joel, what do you think of this?
It's cool. It sounds like Avar and Elzar are gonna be making kissy faces, and Vern's just gonna have to deal with it. I start imagining just Vern can have this look as she has Avar and Elzar go.
Yeah.
I wonder if their love's gonna do something. Either their love won't matter. I wonder if their love's gonna do something incredibly stupid that causes the Jedi to crack down on Jedi sucking face with each other.
That's probably true. That's possible. I mean, we know, well, we know Padawans are allowed to explore these things, but knights and certainly not masters. And so, it raises this interesting question. I mentioned with Ram, uh, Avar and Vern have both had very dramatic. So is Lula Talasola in Power Republic Adventures. Check out our Tractor Beam episode from last week for all about that. But Avar and Vern have also had very dramatic responses to the Fall of Starlight. Uh, I mean, Elzar, interestingly, he stepped up and taken on the best of Stellan and the best of Elzar together, and you see him in this cover with the gold temple robes, with the beard, with Stellan's lightsaber, but also still being messy, being passionate, being out there. Avar and Vern, Avar has had to shed this, and that's in Eye of Darkness. She's had to shed this whole hero of Hetzel thing and say, I'm going to wear brown. I'm going to go undercover. I'm going to do what needs to be done to succeed in the mission. I'm not going to worry too much about the rules or about my image. I'm going to meet people where they're at on the ground. Vern is kind of similar. I mean, she was aspired to be the hero. She aspired to be out there with Avar when the Jedi are kind of closed in. The Vern wanted to be out there and take action as well against the Island Phase 1. She's kind of, I mean, she's still a little bit of that, but really wanting to, I mean, she's a Pathfinder now, or Wayfinder rather. Um, and so, it'll be interesting. She wants to kind of go on her own a little bit. Again, with Avar and Elzar, like Avar was MIA. Avar was off trying to take on the Drengir, and then Lorna D when she was the Marshal of Starlight Beacon and should have been on Starlight Beacon. And that's thankfully for the Luminous authors has really affected her, and they really brought that out. They could have kind of ignored that. Lazier storytelling would have ignored that, but no, this is really being a major impetus for her in atoning for her absence. And so it seems to be this is where she's at. Yeah, again, Vern. Again, just coming back to Vern, it'll be interesting to see because we haven't had much of her yet in Phase 3.
Considering she's about the cameo in a big TV series, you think?
Well, yeah, that's 100 years later. So
I know you still think the book would want to tie that in. If they kind of
yeah, that's true. I mean, any kind of Vern mention is going to have that weight. No, it's true. But I'm well to say, I mean, this is the start of her actually learning that she doesn't know everything, that she doesn't have it all figured out when she at age 19, that nobody does. And so just to actually go figure out what she needs to do. Yeah, like the question you raised, what is her take on this romance? It's clearly going against the foundations of what the Jedi care about in terms of their attachment to the Order, their freedom to go where the Order needs to send them, go where the Force wills them. I'm sure they're going to have to find some reason why the Force is willing them to pursue these passions, because
they need to go Naboo because House Palpatine needs to rise to power. That's
I
why.
mean, that lake house is just so romantic, right?
I know it is.
I mean, especially for Jedi.
There's
a thing about Jedi going to that lake house. That's the Naberi Lake House, but yeah. Well, here's a question. Yeah, we're wondering House Palpatine shows up. Who knows what House Naberi is up to? How strong they are or not in this time period? Yeah, we know Santeka. They're the business. So anyway, I've talked a lot about this because I'm so excited by it. You have anything more to say about it?
Nope. Let's see what happens.
There you go. House Palpatine. All right. So yeah, and also, no, folks in the comments down below, yeah, let us know what you think. If you're excited for this novel to come out, what you're excited about, what you're looking for doing Bad Batch. It's canon. We talk about it. It's Star Wars. We talk about it, even if everyone else is talking about it too. Everyone else and literally their mom is talking about the Bad Batch. My mom is
Leave
watching Bad Batch.
comments.
Yeah,
Leave
in comics. Anyway, yeah. Let us know in the comments below. Already. Shifting gears. We're gonna get that out of the way. Let's shift some gears. Take a breath.
the circle of
I'm
life.
gonna yeah, circle of life. Shifting gears, because last week and just now we did kind of our due about romantic attachment and Valentine's Day, and we talked a lot about um even about those attachments breaking up and ending. But Ash Wednesday happened to fall on Valentine's Day, and so we thought let's mark Valentine's Day last week by talking about Lerv, and mark Ash Wednesday this week by talking about death. Which the two are intertwined as well, and it got me thinking. To do a little bit of I'll bring this up too. You should get that exclamation mark out. It's the wrong time for that. And it, I don't usually do this. My old podcast, For Christ's Sake, Anakin, would have Lent series going on, and so and I bring this up. I mean, it's important just to me, and I think to a number of viewers in the Star Wars fandom, but also because as I mentioned off the top, death and rebirth and the struggle for meaning, given the limits of life, is a theme in Star Wars for sure. And so thought we can pause to talk about it a little bit. What is Lent really about? And what is it? It's the 46-ish days, technically 40 days, but 46 days between Ash Wednesday and Easter. It's all about preparing for celebrate Easter, the resurrection, and the new life that comes about because a death has happened. Um, and it isn't meant to be so dour, and it's gotten talking to one of my priests yesterday, and he's saying in our culture it's been very dour, and what are you taking on? And he said it's kind of like a joke, right? What are you taking on for Lent and whatnot? Chris and I on Wednesday talked about doing meat on Fridays or whatever. It's really about opening yourself up to new life, and it is painful to open ourselves up. It is painful to let go of things that just get in the way, and yeah, and again, that's something Star Wars has done a lot. My mind immediately goes, and this goes back to what we are saying with Mortis. My mind goes back to Rey and Luke on Octo, and
One of
how
the images in that thread.
yeah,
So
yeah, one of the images, specifically that first lesson on the stone, uh, and I quoted this off the top. Yeah, Rey reach out. If she feels the tickle of the grass in that moment, but then she really looks and really listens, and I'll quote again. She sees life, death, and decay that feeds new life. Death
circle of
and
life.
decay, the circle of life, but not so much. And this gets at what the Mortis, what we're talking about with Mortis. It's life, death, and decay that feeds new life. So the cycle and the focus of the Force is for the preserving and flourishing of life. It just so happens that there are things that get in the way of that. There are just even, evolutionary biology said, you know, less viable strains, traits of a species. And I don't mean to get into eugenics. This does not apply to human beings. In the immediate scale, but for plants and animals, and the way humans came to be, Darwin a good Anglican priest that he was, or Anglican theologian that he was. So yeah, that this is part of what has to get out of the way in order for life to be even stronger. And that's the thing about the place of the sun. That's the thing about place of death and decay in the economy of the light side of the force, and the economy of and what all real world traditions hopefully have a sense about, at least the ones that when they're oriented towards life, and the way to be oriented towards life have a way of grappling with the reality of death and accepting it and being serene about it, because I mean, eggs die, birds die, they feed the soil sprouts up. That's
The lions eat the antelope becomes the grass, and the animals eat the grass.
Yes,
We're all
exactly.
connected in the great circle of life.
It's a circle, but again, it's directed towards, because a circle could also just be directed either way, and that's, I think, the criticism of the Twitter thread. It's directed towards life. We see we see Anakin and Luke on the Death Star, right? We see the son of Padme writhing in the in Palpatine's Force lightning, sorry, on the ground there, where Anakin sees the son of Padme writhing and says, "If I have to sacrifice my life to bring an end to this great evil in the galaxy, in order for life to flourish again, I will do that."
I have a feeling that wasn't Vader's thinking when he was doing that, though. I don't think he cared that much
that's
about
the story. That's what George was thinking, right? I think that's, and maybe sure it could be in terms of, well, I mean, she wasn't thinking any kind of wide metaphysical theme here. He was thinking, my son's in trouble, I must save him.
Yeah.
That's always the, but that is, I mean, that's the sacrifice of parenthood, right? That is an evolutionarily ingrained impulse. The only we're so invested in our children, and we're so protective of them, and especially mothers. I mean, the whole sense of mothers protecting, and fathers, because that's our part in furthering the species. It's so when children are in danger, when child poverty, child hunger, children in place of war and displacement, that is a failure of humanity. That is a failure for humanity to fully be itself, especially with children. I'm thinking of one or two parts of the world right now where that is the case. But
more than that in this day.
More than that, but there's the two that are, on the headlines. Then also, and we'll get to this a little more, we have the characters of Loden, Stellan to some extent, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. Why do they have to die early in the story in order for that story to move forward? I think it's different for all four of them. I think with Stellan, we'll get to Qui-Gon a little later. With Stellan, it's so Elzar can really take his place. With Loden, it's for Bell. For Obi-Wan, it's for Luke, obviously. For Qui-Gon, it's for the Jedi Order as a whole, and for Yoda, and that's why we'll get to it later. But there is that theme, that pattern that keeps coming back, is these characters, what their last great impact on the galaxy is the way they leave, and the way they leave it. And that's the thing, the struggle for meaning. One of the great themes is ideas that in Western Christianity is a good death. Well, not necessarily Western Christianity, but to say, oh, there can be a good death. How? If it's at the service of life. And so that's the thing. We'll get one of the questions you have, Joel, later on, is death part of the dark side? Well, anything that is serving life is by definition part of the light side. And
To be
so
fair,
that is
that's my agreement too. I'm not debating that.
yeah. So but it's a question you raised, and so that's why I'm getting it now is that is how the light can the light and life can take on death within itself. That is, I mean, that's the mystery of Easter, right? And I know that's a very churchy phrase. Sorry, that's the paradox, the thing that Christians celebrate, that the resurrection of Jesus. I'm just going to go for this. Theology says Theology Time. The resurrection of Jesus contains within itself the crucifixion, the reality of Jesus' own death, and that's the hope. And again, we're going to get to this at the end. The victory for all time is to say it's not, it's not to cheat death, but it's to embrace it as part of the flourishing of life. And so that's what Lent is for. Lent is to remind us that we all have limits, we all have needs, we're all vulnerable. That's a good thing. That's we all need each other. We all, however you square this, at least Christians would say we all need someone beyond us who made us and rose us from the dead. There might, there's different ways of expressing the divine. We all need each other. We all need to care for each other, and we need love, and need to give and receive. And so, yeah, it's a time to really reflect and focus on that. And so Star Wars does a great job of that. And so with that, Joel, I'll pass it over back to you. Pass the pulpit back to you, and yeah, death and beyond in Star Wars.
Well, you said everything. Let's go over. Let's go. No, I'm just kidding. That was good. Okay. Well, okay. Kind of weird that we're gonna kind of take a little bit of a step back from all the theology stuff and kind of get more into the nitty gritty.
Well, that's the idea. Is let's look at the stories.
All right. So, death in Star Wars.
Mhm.
So, how has death served the narrative of Star Wars from day one?
Mhm.
Funny enough, A New Hope is really the one with probably the most deaths in the least of the original trilogy. We'll start with the original trilogy for right now. Prequel's a whole different story. So we have a lot of what I call very plot-driven deaths because these are deaths that are meant to kind of move the plot along. We got Uncle Owen, Aunt Beru, got Alderaan, Obi-Wan, of course. Thanks, I forgot. I'm trying to think if anyone else died. Well, I mean, all the pilots.
I was gonna say the pilots.
All the Porkins. Red Leader, the original.
Everyone on the Death Star.
Every Tarkin. And to kind of move away from the theology to kind of just more film critique. There's a bit of a weirdness with some of the deaths in Star Wars, where there's almost sometimes a bit of a weird weightlessness, and other times like the weight is like in different places. So if our buddy Red Leader was here, he probably might want me to mention this. Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru are kind of a good example where you have the moment where Luke's seeing them, and it's very sad. They're all charred, burnt. And then Luke kind of never talks about them ever again. It's like, okay, my aunt and uncle are dead. I'll come with you, Obi-Wan.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get Alderaan, where, Leia loses her whole planet. And then the next time we see her, she's just like, a little short from Stormtrooper. And then the next minute, she's comforting Luke when Obi-Wan's dead. Like, I can't believe he's gone. Mm-hmm. There's even a joke on Robot Chicken of Leia going, "Oh, I'm sorry, Luke. You lost an old guy you only met for a couple hours while my whole planet is dead." I mean, obviously, I think in retrospect, with the Kenobi series now, you can say she's now moaning Obi-Wan because the Leia meant Obi-Wan when she was a kid, so she knows who he is. There's a connection there, so retroactive continuity, yay. So you kind of have these weird where the deaths matter, but also it's like Luke never feels like the trauma of losing his parents who raised him and we know loved him. Like, I never can talk about Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru ever again. I'll talk more about Obi-Wan. Talk about my own dad. Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, who cares about them? They're charred and burned. And thankfully a lot of books and stuff have at least talked about the fact of Leia's feelings on Alderaan
Yeah.
in detail, like Bloodline and Leia, Princess of Alderaan. No, wait, not Leia, Princess of Alderaan. The beforehand, Princess and the Scoundrel.
Yeah.
Thank you for getting that one.
Mhm.
So that's A New Hope.
Mhm.
Then we move on to Empire. No one dies in Empire, at least not of anyone of character importance.
Just which is weird because we think it's the Empire Ascendant, but
I mean, Han gets frozen carbonite, and it's like, is he dead? Is he not? Oh no! But it's like, no one actually dies.
Right.
Luke loses the hand, but that's about it. And then Return of the Jedi. That's one of the big stories. Is Kasdan and some of the others thought maybe someone should die to add a little bit of drama, and also because we don't really know what to do with Han Solo.
Right.
And George is like, no, I want everyone to live because I just want it. Just give everyone live, have happy endings, all that good stuff, except Vader, of course. Gotta die.
But we got the Force Ghost.
We got the Force Ghost. That is happy endings. And so it's interesting, kind of death kind of goes away in Star Wars in the original trilogy really quickly after the first one. Which, prequels are different because a lot of people die in the prequels, and probably because there's gotta be some death because the story demands it.
Yeah.
Obviously, Qui-Gon dies because we don't see him, and Obi-Wan's supposed to train Anakin. So there's reasons for the story reason for that. Anakin's mom dies to attack the clones. And how many people die in Revenge of the Sith, Matthew?
66. Precisely 66 Jedi die now.
Yeah. There's a little bit of dimness in Revenge of the Sith. You know how it goes. With the Order 66, everyone pretty much dies. Well, we know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's like that movie is Death, the movie. So that's kind of gets to the weight of like, oh shoot, like everything's going downhill. It's all going downhill, people.
Well, that's the trajectory of that film, right?
Oh yeah, of course. I know. I'm making fun, but yeah. So that kind of comes back again in a weird big way with the prequels. And then with the newer movies, it's like, yeah, sometimes people. I'm not gonna go over all of them because there's so many.
Yeah.
Well, I guess Luke, Han, and Leia kind of all die. Han and his big sacrifice. Luke, of course, his sacrifice. Leia and her sacrifice. Although that was more because Carrie passed away. And
yeah.
I know for a fact that in the only version of the script where Carrie was still alive, Leia was actually supposed to outlive all of them. Kind of as the last Bloodline Skywalker remaining. Right. Probably to oversee the next generation, kind of the last mentor figure. So there's that. We can talk about that a little bit later. There's all sorts. I know everyone's like, oh, sorts of controversies and stuff, silly as it is, but yes. And yeah, then kind of individually, some characters die because it's like they don't really need to be there. Or with Rogue One, it's like I think that's important to the story's weight.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of the history of deaths in Star Wars, and we'll find out soon in Bad Batch where that falls. But
Tech, yeah.
Tech, yep. Let's start with A New Hope because I think that to me is sort of the interesting one in terms of we have some big deaths in Star Wars with Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru and Alderaan, and yet there's always that kind of weightlessness in it, at least in the long term. In the scene itself, it's fine. It's like Luke has that very sad face. But the fact he never talks about his aunt and uncle ever again, like he never brings them up, and he has yet to bring them up in any Luke-centric stories. I don't know if he brought them up in the comics anytime soon. I just haven't seen it, but
only in that Kenobi comic,
the
Kenobi flashback comic.
That's too bad. But it's like it's one of those things. It's like, geez, Luke, did you really hate your aunt and uncle that much that you never talk about them ever again? It's kind of weird, and then. At least with Leia, they kind of reconciled that with like showing her in books and stuff later, like thinking about Alderaan. But that's sort of like the weird how the death is executed. Death is executed. In A New Hope as kind of the foundations. Do you want to start?
Well, you mentioned weightlessness, right? And Luke at the beginning of the film, he has this weight on him. Literally, he's pinned to Tatooine.
Right.
Not literally, but he's stuck. And the whole point, is that he Owen and Beru are barbecued, uh, so that's the moment of decision. Oh, I'm going to go to Alderaan, learn the
Right.
ways of the Force.
Hmm.
Then on the Death Star, Obi-Wan dies, and that spurs Luke on to join really be part of the Rebel Alliance and um, whatnot. Yeah, I think if there were if there was more script involvement, if it was written today, written by say luminous authors or who knows what, there would have been more of that. There would have been more, like we're gonna see in Bad Batch, right? The implications of
Hmm.
those losses weighing on Luke more so. It does spur him on. It does spur him on to seek a deeper meaning and a wider meaning of his first steps into a wider world. Yeah, Alderaan, interestingly, in the Leia comic, how she that pushes her into the spotlight.
Hmm.
Pushes her into taking leadership in the Rebel Alliance,
Hmm.
and taking on more responsibility. Ultimately, that comic is about her in 2015. I think primarily. Remember, it's been 9 years ago. Uh, about her finding the remnants of Alderaan and bringing them together. And again, that's her stepping up in the alliance as well. That's where we get Yvonne Verlaine, and she becomes the kind of the regent of Alderaan, of New Alderaan. Um, yeah, I mean the point with Alderaan is I mean, here's the dreaded word. Sorry, folks. My apologies. Please forgive me. Stakes. um,
Steak.
that the Death Star actually is. Yeah, I'm hungry too. The Death Star actually is that dangerous and that powerful, and the Empire is that cruel that they would destroy an entire planet. And that's just it. We're getting to death into the dark side, and um,
We'll get there.
is that willing to control life by dealing death on that scale. So
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think
mhm.
I love A New Hope, but it's like you can tell it's the '70s, and
Yeah,
it's more of an action pop story
yeah,
where it's like we're not going to really delve into our psychological traumas, um,
yeah. And
compared
here's a
to.
good comment here too. And it's another part of it. It's possible that he just doesn't have the tools to talk about it as much. Leia just doesn't have the opportunity to talk about it as much. Yeah.
I mean, if you want in-universe explanation, yes, I think that's probably the way
Yeah.
you can write it. But I always like looking at the moment. It's like, yeah, I just
Mhm.
think there was like, oh, we just need to get to the next scene.
Yeah.
Which is why I really like Last Jedi again, because that's
Yeah.
kind of like let's actually do some psychological trauma on Luke
Yes.
for Ryan Johnson would have hammered home maybe Uncle Owen and Peru. In fact,
Mhm.
there's my one criticism Last Jedi. I didn't talk about Uncle Owen and Peru. Even my beloved Ryan Johnson still does not talk
Well,
about his aunt and uncle.
yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of the evolution of death
Mhm.
in the Star Wars films. Um, I do think that in terms of like stakes and weight, they've definitely gotten a lot better of like analyzing it a little bit and like
Yeah.
let's deal with a little bit of the aftermath beyond. Oh, someone's dead. Move on to the
Yeah.
next person.
I will say, I mean, the only reason it was all I'm sorry guys, forgive me, whatever. I mean, Game of Thrones kind of put a damper on this, right? And so they kind of it becomes for the sake of it rather
Oh, I
than
mean,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that doesn't have to cause stakes. I mean, I'm not saying A New Hope does it badly. I mean, it does perfectly. I
Yeah.
think it didn't. It just in terms of like the dramatic aftermath of a death, it's like
Yeah.
Luke's character is a little bit hollow
Sure.
because of it. At least at that moment.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I guess the next big thing about death that we as fans love to talk about,
Yeah.
death, like death in the name of the canon.
Hmm.
And we always see this a lot when anybody who was not in the original trilogy or the prequel trilogy, although we haven't done any, well, we're about to with Acolyte, or now the sequel trilogy
Oh.
isn't around. Are they dead? Ahsoka's not in Force Awakens. She dead. Uh, the Rogue One people aren't in the New Hope. Are they dead? Well, we got that answer.
Yeah.
Um, Cal Kestis isn't in a New Hope. Is he dead? Is Luke technically not the last of the Jedi he would be?
Hmm.
Um, so I think I think there's almost this weird thing we fans do whenever a new character is introduced, and because we don't know what happens to them or don't see, we just kind of assume, oh, they're dead.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, in some
True.
ways, I understand it to a certain extent because it is the dark times. It's like
True.
you can't really get much of a happy ending in the dark times.
Mhm.
Because the empire's still out there. It's not like you can really find peace with long as there's an evil empire
Mhm.
still out there. I mean, maybe more so in the New Republic era, because
True.
they could have just ended with Din just Ginger and having a
Yeah,
nice
and
happy
just
life.
the overall.
He got 30
Mm.
years more before the First Order shows up and screws everything over for a couple of years.
I will say, to that point, who could have predicted space whales coming in? Where's Thrawn? Where's Ezra? Well, that's where they are. We know exactly where they were. And it is really good. I mean, that's just it though, is thinking about Cal, for example. Tell us a good story. That's fine. Tell us a good story. If their death fits with, like I'm saying, with these other characters, if it fits with who these characters are in the way they support life and they seek life, or with Palpatine, if his attempt, and we'll get to this in a minute, but his attempt to control life through death comes back to bite him. Okay, tell me that good story. Ends up biting him twice. you know, uh, tell us that story. Yeah, I mean that's the thing is they don't have to resort to it, and that's the one of the great things about the Purgo moment in Rebels, right? That they don't resort to killing them off because it wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have made sense in that time, and so they say, okay, let's. And of course, Filoni was probably thinking, oh yeah, this is Ahsoka show I'm going to do, or movie or whatever one day. Yeah, again, the Game of Thrones thing is
It's not
has
just the
all
Game of
these.
Thrones thing. I think this is
Well,
more
what
of
I
a.
mean is it has all these implications of rating and getting out, and we think, and so that's I think partly why, because we're now accepting, well, that's just a thing you can do. It's just off them, and no, their death has to serve life if they are a light side character. I mean I can see why people with Akbar are like, okay, um, that's why I love Holdo. I mean, the Holdo maneuver, it's brilliant, right? So, yeah, this whole plot, definitely a plot. They have to get them. They have to have a good reason for them to be out of the way, to be not the main focus. I mean, the other thing, but I like what they've done with Hera, for example, where they've dotted her in. Even in what's the campfire, the Maskanata campfire animated shorts.
Oh,
That one.
that one.
Yeah, she's kind of in there. She's on Endor with Luke, right?
Forces of Destiny.
That
There we
one.
go.
She's on Endor with Luke, and then of course in Rogue One, she shows up.
Mhm.
Uh,
She's in Alphabet Squadron too,
Alphabet Squadron. Oh gosh,
and
the
Squadrons.
squadrons. That's what I was gonna. Yeah, I keep blanking. So there's other things you can do. I mean, that's the retroactive continuity bit, but yeah, again, tell us a good story. If you're gonna kill them off, tell us a good story. Why too? Ahsoka, for example, I don't think Ahsoka is actually gonna ever die. This is gonna be it's a whole other thing. This is a bit of a tangent. Maybe I'll bring it up at the end here, but I wonder if she's going to be such a servant of the light that she's going to just be transfigured or something, like some weird assumed into. I don't know. I'm being weird and esoteric there, but
At this point, probably.
yeah.
But I mean, it is one of those things, right? I remember when watching Rebels, where they were like, "Are Ezra and Kanan gonna die?" Because Luke's kind of
Kanan's
the only. Well,
Kanan is
Kanan does.
one of the great all-time great deaths in Star Wars, right?
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
But I remember before then, it's like they thought, oh, well, how's this gonna work? Because Luke's kind of the new hope here, and you got these two Jedi who are kind of growing in power every day. It's like, well, what are they gonna train? Or did Luke have more Jedi Masters than we know? And it's like, what's gonna happen? And well, obviously, Kanan did die. I remember people weren't happy about that. Some people weren't happy about that either. And obviously Ezra got space whaled. I mean, I think Kanan. I was glad Kanan died because I think Ezra needed that extra push. Personally, I think he wouldn't have grown without kind of losing the mentor figure.
Mhm.
Not that I think you need to always lose your mentor figure to grow, but so like
Right.
I think in Ezra's case that probably helped
That is the trope and the
and
pattern in Star Wars, right?
it
That I
gave him
mentioned.
the focus. And then with Ezra, it's like, well, they found their way out to get Thrawn and Ezra off the board because I
Mhm.
think the Empire would have had an easier time if their most brilliant commander was around.
True.
Um, and obviously there's another Jedi running around, so that would be awkward. So it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, there is something to be said of like, well, where are all these other Jedi when the Battle of Endor is going on? Where are they? If they're especially if they're active Jedi, if they're retired or hiding, then that's
You get a
one thing.
barrage foul.
If they're doing that stuff,
Yeah.
sure. But like, Ezra was very active in the rebellion.
Yeah.
So like, where was he when Luke was around? And obviously, they had their answer. And I'm glad because I was worried, like, oh, I don't want them to kill off Thrawn. He's only the original trilogy era. He's the post Return of the Jedi villain. That's where he's the coolest. And I got my wish.
Yeah.
So
There you
hooray
go.
for me.
Yeah.
But
I'll say that. So I'll say, I mean, another thing to note where we're going to get more information about this path
Mhm.
of whatever. We got this in Kenobi. We're going to get it. We got it in Jedi Survivor. We might get something if we get a Quinlan shout out in Bad Batch, or we get something there. We're going to get more stories about that. I mean, that is just an interesting story question. Is what were Jedi up to during the dark times? How do you be? That's one of the things I've always. I mean, that brilliant. My favorite legend story probably is Dark Times, the comic book run. Because how do you be a Jedi? What do you let go of?
Mhm.
What do you say? I can no longer be a Jedi now. All that to say is, do these characters have to die because they aren't in this later thing? I mean, it's something that the storytellers always, when they're developing a new Jedi character, for example, or a new character, always have to keep in mind. I think, I mean, one of the things the Kanan story, for example, brings up is here's the criteria to what we need to assess is
Mhm.
does this, regardless of what happens after, does this death fit well with the character and in that moment? And when he's holding back all that gas or whatever it is from flying at
Yes.
Hera, at his family, and the Force then rewards him by being able to see Hera for the last time. And able to save him. And the world between worlds, Ezra seeing that and doesn't go save him because it fits, because
Oh
it's
yeah.
fitting, right? With the character himself, regardless of what happens. They could have figured something. This is kind of my point. Is if it doesn't fit to kill them off, then they have to just figure something out. Why? Yeah, where's Quinlan? What's Quinlan doing? Where I don't know.
Where are all these past Jedi going? Like, are they just gonna stay in hiding for? Now, I
Yeah.
do think though. I mean, okay. So I think. So with Kanan and Ezra, it's you have to think of something because they're active Jedi.
Yeah.
It's not like these past Jedi. Like it seems like they're just in a hut somewhere
That's what I'm
hiding.
kind of getting at. Literally Yoda in a hut, right?
Yeah, unlike Yoda's like well, Yoda's kind of waiting around while these guys are like, no, we're done, we're out,
Yeah.
we're hiding. I mean, it can go too far. Like in the Legacy comics, there's like a not a Juntapal, somebody else. Oh, I forget his name. There's a Jedi Master who had like a secret order in like a part of the galaxy with like 1,000 Jedi for like 100 years, and it's like, where were you guys during
Yeah.
and if you had an active organization, where were you guys the whole time? It can go too far.
Yeah.
I mean, even Lucas himself thought, there's probably like 100 of you guys out there in the galaxy, maybe just in hiding, and Luke can find you, and maybe like, hey, the Empire's gone. You can come out now. You're good. You aren't gonna get killed.
As Douglas Adams says, space is big.
It is big. I mean, it's like usually the question. One of the things Ahsoka kind of doesn't really answer the series is, okay, Ahsoka was active with Sabine during the Galactic Civil War. What was she doing? And did she meet Luke during that time? Is there like a story we don't know? It's like technically speaking, there was a force sensitive named
Mhm.
Ahsoka out there with
Yeah.
Sabine and doing things during the Civil War, and we know Sabine at least was
Yeah.
partially part of the Rebel Alliance proper.
I
So
think we'll get some of that in Ahsoka season 2. Probably get a little bit of that.
I guess Ahsoka, like, where was Ahsoka secretly on Endor, like she was secretly with Padme's funeral? I mean, I'm sure Filoni could probably make
Yeah.
that happen. But yeah,
If we need it to happen, that's the thing. If the character
if he
in
wanted to have to.
if he wants to happen, but say in Ahsoka season 2,
Mhm.
if where there are, I mean, that's the thing. That's we always have to get in mind, and I think that's the thing that this questions like, do characters have to die because they aren't an X, is a distraction from.
Right.
It's sure we want things to be coherent and
I didn't see
consistent.
the Bad
It
Batch in
has
episode
to be
4.
it has to be the dark side, the dark times. That has to be consistent. You can't have a whole gaggle of hundreds of Jedi around, you know. But in Ahsoka season 2, Ahsoka and Sabine on Peridea, what they're up to then, whatever backstory you fill in, that's going to be determined by what they're up to in the story we're telling now. Otherwise, they would have just gone back and told that story instead, right?
Right.
The fact that Ahsoka and Sabine had kind of this falling out, the reason they developed that backstory is because it's important for them coming back together in season 1. And Sabine, we seen this moment where Sabine finds herself and Ahsoka finds herself again.
Mm-hmm.
We always have to remember that, right? That yeah, again, this lore stuff is fun, but we're more compelled by what we see, even if we don't know it fully, right? We're compelled by what we see in the actual story itself. So
Yeah, I mean that, like, no one has to die. Like, again,
exactly.
I don't think the Bad Batch have to die. I don't think you have to kill any of them off.
Mhm.
Will they die? I don't know. We have the next season. We'll find out.
Whereas Rogue One, I mean, I think they did. I mean, that even if it isn't necessarily some logical linear thing, we feel the weight of what they did and what they did to save the galaxy.
I think it was good that they died in
Yeah,
Rogue
I
One.
agree.
thought
I mean,
that
that's what I'm
was
saying. Is and John Nolan them, wanted them to die off. They were worried that Disney wouldn't let them, as we know. And as we know, Disney came back and said, "Oh yeah, why don't you kill them all off?" It's not stakes, it's weight. Well, maybe there's a difference there. It's the weight of what they and so many others were willing to do in order to stop the Death Star threat, and literally called the Death Star. Yeah. So
yeah,
good deaths is what I'm getting at here.
indeed. So I think that did we talk? I mean, we kind of talked about the death, the dark side. Unless you want to go back to that a little bit, or you want to go to the next one.
Well, it gets into the point, so I'll probably bring it up again. Keep going.
All right, so we've talked about deaths, and now we've time to go back to our theology time. But this time, we're going to talk a little about the dark side of the Force, which is the pathway to many abilities, some considered to be
Yes.
unnatural. Da-da-dum.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. So if the Jedi are all about life, sacrifice, circle of life, so they're all about clinging to life with no matter what, and you hold on to for dear life because you live via spite. Greatest example, Darth Maul. He lived because he was just too spiteful to die. He lives through sheer spite and willpower that when you see him, he's a freaking spider Maul, crazy and living in garbage.
And a very poetic. I mean, that's very poetic and evocative of his state of mind, right?
Yes. Although Mother Talzin fixes him up,
Yeah.
kind of gets him back on his feet.
Mhm.
Of course, get old Sheev, old Uncle Palps. His body exploded, but yet through the power of all the dark and evil of the world,
Mhm.
he used essence transfer and clung himself to a clone body he had ready on Exegol, and it started to decay and wither, and he was trapped, and it was not fun. Which is one thing I actually really like about the whole ethical clone thing. It's like, okay, at least there's a lot of consequences to your actions, pal. You didn't get just a nice clone. Like, no, you got a failing one, and you're running on time.
Mm-hmm.
So you screwed yourself over even before you got there.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Sis can't be Force Ghosts. The best the Sis can do is put their essence into like either into essentially. I hate using the word. Into essentially a Horcrux. It's a Horcrux.
Yeah.
It's either a talisman or in Palpatine. Like the Horcrux for Palpatine is his clone body. That is the vest. Like it's the body, but it's like more of a containment for his actual
Or his granddaughter.
or his granddaughter. But like he wants to put his actual essence
Yeah.
in it, and then when he takes over his granddaughter, the idea is I'm going to subsume your personality, Ray, and I'm going to become you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have a nice Daisy Ridley body, but
Mm-hmm.
or an Adam Driver body. Sis can't be Force Ghost, and that's it's very telling. One of the things in the Plagueis novel I was rereading a few days ago, with Plagueis talking about how the dark Sith of the past never really guide us outside of like maybe just if you can find a talisman, or if I did that, the best luck I would have if some schmuck found my amulet and I could just convince them, but they have to be so weak-minded that it's like it's not like I could just appear before my apprentice and like, hey, Palpatine, do more evil the right way, and then go back to the dark side. In fact, in Legends, I'll read this and then we can kind of I'll let you talk. Dark Empire, Empire's End, 1994 by Tom Veitch. Has
The
this
other
little-
Empire's End.
the Legends Empire's End,
Yeah.
where Palpatine comes back in a clone body. Palpatine talks about why he doesn't want to die, and this is what he has to say or think. Emperor Palpatine does not relish the prospect of death without reincarnation. The Emperor knows that disembodiment in the dark side is perpetual madness, as if to live forever like an open wound, experience terror without respite. That is the fate Palpatine wants to postpone at all cost. So yeah, Sith don't like dying, and they do everything in their power to not die.
Right.
You may begin.
Yeah. So I mean that's the thing with the dark side. What is the dark side? It's the attempt to control life through death, right? What is the light side? It's the flourishing of life, which can incorporate death. It's as if so in the dark side, it's attempt to control life through the death of others if need be, but I can't incorporate death into my own life because that is a defeat, and that is vulnerability, and that is weakness, and that is loss, and the inability to see that loss and suffering. I mean, there's the Sith code, but they're almost lying to themselves, right? There's no happiness, there's only pain or whatever. I mean, the reason masters inflicted on their apprentices is to give them something to overcome, right? To push against that, to be the one to crave to be the one to inflict suffering on others, to be free of suffering at the expense of others. It's as if they don't get that their own lives matter enough that they or that their lives can't come to an end because they never achieved what a meaningful life is, and that is the flourishing of life and the well-being of others and yourself. But if it's only consumed with preventing death, then is it worth preserving in the first place? And that's that's what we see again with Palpatine, right? What with why Palpatine has to die, right? Again, he's a character device. He's not a real person. When it comes to real persons, all people, their lives are valuable and meaningful. It's just that they, the most evil characters in human history, it's that they've defaulted, that they've, like I said, it's a failure of humanity to inflict suffering on others, especially children. It's a crime against humanity, is why we call it that. Why we use that all or nothing phrase, a crime against the whole darn species. And so I mean, that's the thing with the Plagueis novel, really shows that um, not only is it, uh, that the dark side, it isn't about submitting to the will of the Force, but mastery over the Force, not just life, but the Force itself, the source of life. I'm wondering, if we get something with Balin, for example, and he's not a Sith, but he's clearly got some dark side creamsicle thing going on. Whatever they end up taking on that story, he's searching for that kind of mastery, that kind of power. I mean, it's this weird, sad irony that, I mean, the actor, I mean, definitely lived a good life, and from everything we've heard, was a wonderful person who cared about others. Um, but uh, why am I blanking on his name? That's not good.
Ray
Yeah,
Stevenson.
yeah, Ray Stevenson. But Balin, Balin's skull, he thought the Jedi were weak because they had these ideals, but maybe he didn't fully buy into their ideals. Yeah, and so it's also why this whole thing though is why I can't subscribe to balance being, and the ideal state being this kind of let dark have its day, let the dark side and tap into the dark side. Um, that's the thing. That's the difference there between a Jedi that serves the light and the idea of a gray Jedi or whatever is a Jedi that serves the light can embrace death as part of life. Someone who is a gray Jedi is this paradox where it's a contradiction where sometimes you're serving the light and sometimes you're trying to deal escape suffering by inflicting it on others, and the two just don't line up. You can't find a way. There's no middle ground between those two. So yeah, I mean, James Lucino going into it, what one of the ways, and you mentioned the talismans, the Horcruxes. One of the things about magic, and one of the things we see in fantasy. I mean, magic can be technology, it can be a tool.
I used the One Ring. The One
Yeah, the
Ring.
one. Well, the One Ring. I mean, that this is. I'll get to that point in a minute. You know, the point being, it's at least with the Sith, it's a means of control, and it's very convenient, compartmentalized. I can have this thing in my hand. I think Tolkien's point is whenever we do that, any kind of use of, or yeah, whenever we do that, we're changed in the process, and we think it is just as simple as holding this thing in our hand and pouring everything in. Even Sauron and the guy, his boss, um,
Morgoth.
yeah, that guy. You know, we're changed. I mean, we see this with this app that we're actually broadcasting on Twitter. Um, the technology, the simplicity of sending 240 characters out has really pushed us to think in very all or nothing terms. And it's so easy, so convenient to spew something out. We think we're being proactive. We think we're being helpful, and we can be. There's a place for that, but we've been unthinking. I'm just using this example. The way even technology, magic or technology or whatever, when we think it's about having the best strategies and having the best influence and being a social media influencer. And again, there are good uses of these technologies and good uses of being a social media influencer and having good PR and good communications and all that. That's fine. One of the things interesting with Lent is to say, Jesus says, whatever you're fasting, whatever you're doing, don't actually be so public about it because that's going to defeat the purpose. Don't be so ostentatious about it. And there's a bit of a tangent here, but um, I'll try and bring it back somehow. Don't be so. Yeah, I think I can bring it back. I think I got it. I got the way back.
Don't talk about your clone body on Exegol.
Well, as in, I mean oh man, I don't know how to bring it back. This is too much of a tangent, but it's our use of technology, our use of our attempt to have mastery over having the most polished message really can affect what the integrity of our message. And so, I mean, we'll get to that with the Jedi in a bit, but yeah, I mean, that's the thing Palpatine really took advantage of, and it was so consumed by, to the point where he has this fake image of himself, the kind, genteel Uncle Sheev, because as if his real life wasn't presentable, as if his real life wasn't, at least if the aim of actually appealing to people as a leader was a weakness, and instead it could have been a strength.
Although actually, sometimes he does like showing off his scarred form. He thinks it's scary. But
Sometimes,
he's
yes,
very
but
inconsistent about that. Actually, he's like sometimes he did that thing in Rebels, and then for the most part, it seems like
yeah,
it's like with like I'm actually a Sith Lord. I'm not gonna say I am, but I am. I'm
yeah,
all scary and spooky. Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, I mean, technology. I mean, look at the consequences of trying to do this. Especially on Palpatine's
mhm,
end. It's like when we see him in Rise of Skywalker, it's not like he's at full power mode sitting on the big, scary, spooky
right,
throne. He's hanging on this metal back omen harness
yeah,
with like IVs and people, nurses attending him 24/7, and
yeah,
it's like he got a missing fingers or missing thumb.
right,
It's like could probably barely move, and it's like this ain't life. This is pain. Why would anyone want this? Why would you want this for yourself? Oh my,
mhm,
w- why would anyone want this? I mean, you look, even Darth Maul didn't suffer that much. I mean, he lost his legs.
right.
Like, perhaps at least he got still had half of himself to
Yeah.
go on, and
And
I
he
guess
had a not the worst death either, interestingly enough.
I mean when you explode, your body explodes compared
No,
to
I'm
you.
talking in no, Maul. The
Oh
number
yeah.
one, just thinking about him, right? He was able to. Obi-Wan confronted him in his hate, and
Mhm.
yeah,
I mean, and then kind of you got.
yeah,
Well, Bree was an interesting case because she kind of does the whole she
yeah,
survives stabbing via her own anger, but kind of realizes so she comes back to the light pretty quick. Thank goodness.
mhm,
So
yeah,
I'm glad she didn't die, but like I'm wonder if like I wonder if her kept her alive with like
yeah,
well maybe she'll find some purpose. Hopefully, if they were to do her
sure,
thing again. Um, guess Anakin didn't die when he got burned up, but like you can tell his probably his hate and the dark side were keeping him going. That kind of
mhm,
spiteful willpower when
yeah,
you're on a lava burnt to a crisp. And I know there's some books that say Palpatine kind of also did some dark side force machinations to like
yeah.
stay alive when he found him. So
Different fan theories too. And all that.
there's some other stuff too for sure. But
Yeah,
yeah, that's the dark side. Keep alive. Oh, here we
mhm.
go.
It's a good
What
question.
is the
Yeah.
good? Thomas Balzer. That is the real question, isn't it? What is Palpatine's endgame? Is it ultimate power to get immortality, or is it immortality to get ultimate power?
Huh.
Well, I mean, if in the Tarkin novel, Palpatine talks about how pretty much step two is now basically become dark good, shift society to a dark side
Mhm.
society where it's all dark side all the time.
Yeah.
So I guess both,
I think he sees them what as one and the same. I think
probably.
the purpose, or at least the purpose of power, is to avoid suffering
Hmm.
by inflicting it on others. And if you have to inflict it on others, then so be it.
He probably wants to
And
be
so
teaching.
like it is the ultimate power
Hmm.
to be able to live forever. Yeah. So I mean, maybe not necessarily one and the same, but certainly coterminous, if I can put it that way. But yeah, I mean, it's a good point in that um he accrues power more and more, even political power and constitutional power, but certainly a weird force magic power, uh, in order to be able to live forever and be in charge forever. Um, yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, well, maybe next week I'll get that Tarkin novel and take a look at the book to see
Hmm.
what it said exactly.
Yeah.
But I guess since we talked about the dark side,
Hmm.
dark side ultimately loses, and Palpatine lost. His enemies won
Hmm.
because they got the victory for all time. Because Jedi can become Force ghost.
Mhm.
Um, and this is to me has always been my interpretation of that line, "Victory for all time." I think some people interpret it as almost like an ultimate battle between good and evil, and evil's defeated forever,
Mhm.
akin to the rapture or something. But I've always preferred this interpretation, also because I know they'll never do that.
Yeah.
As Yoda wins, Obi-Wan wins, Qui-Gon wins, because even though in they physically die, they are so one with the Force, they can come
Mhm.
back in the form of a Force ghost. And unlike cis spirits who like they have to get really lucky if someone finds their talisman or their decaying clone bodies, like they can pop in and out anytime. It's like,
Mhm.
100 years in the Star Wars future, maybe some new Force sensitive girl or
Mhm.
person, is trying to figure out this Force stuff. And, maybe Force Ghost Yoda comes and goes like, yes, familiar this all is. Yoda I am. Great master I was. They
I
can
mean, he comes
continue.
to Luke on Octo.
Exactly. So it's like,
Yeah.
but I don't think I mean, I do wonder, like, if I like to just think they can appear before anybody. Personally, they
Yeah.
don't even need to know the person. But like, the Jedi spirits of old can, make contact and help out any future Jedi, in the future
Mhm.
or the past or whatever. And this is where my hot take is, and why I like the
Mhm.
second defeat of Palpatine a bit more, because I really think it taps into that more cosmic. This is the victory for all time because Rey heard all the Jedi voices. Because all the true Jedi,
Mhm.
even Mace Windu is there, and they're
Right.
like, we're behind you, Rey. You can do this. You got this, Rey. You can defeat your grandpa. You got it. And then she does because she got all the Jedi. She got all the Jedi backing her up in force in the Force, and
Mhm.
that's why the Jedi can ultimately always win because the Jedi will always be there, and they're almost immortal in a sense. Well,
Mhm.
it's like, I mean, yeah, sure, a future Edge Lord can find the holocrons and become Darth Edge Lord,
Sure.
but it's like, Palpatine's not going to be able to help him. He's stuck in the void, screaming forever, and or it's
Totally.
like maybe an ancient Sith Lord who's got a moment helmet can like help for a few minutes, but if you take out the helmet and the helmet falls into like a pit, like, well, they're not going to be that helpful.
Yeah.
So that is why the Jedi ultimately are the victors because they can become Force ghosts and live forever, and that is
Yeah.
true
It's a
victory.
question of what are Force ghosts and why are Force ghosts? And the answer really comes back to, why does the Force
Mhm,
say, yes, you can take on your personality, your personhood that you had before.
mhm,
You have Claudia Gray's Master and Apprentice, a short story in the New Hope Fact Pov, uh, describing Qui-Gon's experience of that, of saying, oh yeah, I have this selfhood that I can now come to because Obi-Wan needs me to in that moment. If that's the thing that will spur on the character, again, this is storytelling 101 here, but it spurs on the character in the moment. And this is kind of the way the Force is the storyteller in this weird meta textual way.
mhm,
Then that's what will happen. That's what the Force will do. Um,
mhm.
the reason is why though? Why can Qui-Gon actually find this and figure this out? Comes back to another thing Claudia Gray wrote, Master and Apprentice, uh, my favorite canon novel. That wonderful line, I don't follow the light because I'm going to win some cosmic game. Now, it is helpful, and your point with Ray, there is this uh, graphic depiction, kind of like Mortis. What happened on Exegol, sort of Mortis-esque in that it is this depiction of light pushing back the death. It's an icon, you know, the undoing of death by death. Right? We have
Right.
icons of the resurrection of Jesus having that. Um, but Qui-Gon says, I don't follow the light because I'm going to win some cosmic game. I'm going to follow the light because it is the light, because the meaning of life, the purpose of life, it is for the flourishing of life. And the meaning of my existence is for the flourishing of life. And so, yeah, death can incorporate that. Yeah, uh, landing on this dusty planet and going and not manipulating, but helping out with the events of a pod race can be involved in that. going before the Jedi Council and saying, "Hey, look, there's corruption here. There's things happening here. Uh, we, you know, we need to actually take action or need to sort this out." That can be for the flourishing of life. And so it's even in that moment he's already won because the actual game itself is life itself, and it goes back to the purpose of it, right? Uh, yeah, I mean, and so I mean that's the thing we talk about eternal life. We talk about heaven, and why, and yeah, Christians do believe in the resurrection of the body and the life everlasting, and and all that in the end and the beyond. What we forget, what we don't quite need to grasp more is um the end. Christians also believe, and a lot of other religions I think believe, in this non-linear time, in that the end has already come in the resurrection, and that's located, and that says that is where the flourishing of life is, that is for the flourishing of life, and therefore we're a part of that. Lent is about opening ourselves up to that reality in ways that then require us to let go of some things and to move past something and get out of our own way. Um, with Qui-Gon, and this is kind of what we're saying here, is Qui-Gon had this keen sense that the Jedi were had not fully grasped that anymore. Or maybe there's no golden age. Maybe in his time he could only speak to the flaws of the Jedi in his time. And yeah, Joel, to your point, often you say that's overwrought, it's overdone. Um, the story that George gives us is that the Jedi are uh they're they're kind of heroic characters. We're meant to cheer for them. We're meant to hope they succeed. But of course, as you mentioned, with the prequel trilogy, there's this downward trajectory. It is the death of the Republic. It is the death of the Jedi, because it's at least the death of the Jedi as they had become. And what they had become was uh I mean, yeah, by circumstances, by them doing their best in the moment, but simply, the way things were, they become, part of this mechanism, this machine, to uh for the Republic, for the sake of the Republic. And again, they're with Lena, so they're a great impetus. We are all the Republic. Let's go for life. But then they end up being part of this great clone war that deals out death, ultimately for the sake of a Sith Lord. And Qui-Gon had a sense of that, and he spoke to that. And there, the part of this downward trajectory, but also the rebirth of the Order, is this question of why did Qui-Gon have to die? Like I said at the top, Obi-Wan dying, it's for Luke's story. uh Loden dying is for Belle's story. Qui-Gon dying is in part for Obi-Wan and Anakin's story, to let those flaws play out. And I was chatting with Dom yesterday, and we were talking, and this is related to what he was saying on Thursday about, how in the narrative itself, in the story itself, how amazing would it have been if Qui-Gon and Dooku were the same character, how much of an emotional hit. Um, but then he was, acknowledging, okay, but the thing that we did get was the ideal Jedi, the ideal that, yes, had to give way for the flaws with Obi-Wan and Anakin, especially to play out, but then for for the Jedi to come to an end, and maybe Luke was right in a little bit. The Jedi as they were had to come to an end, at least if they're that weak, for at the height of their powers, for let the a Sith Lord rise from the Empire and wipe them out. Um,
I mean, I don't
because
agree
they
with
had
that, but
lost they had lost but they had kind of lost their sense of their ability to go out and be present, and that's something I think John Jackson Miller is going to explore, and I think that's what High Republic is exploring
I mean, I
in a
don't
fun
actually
way.
agree with that, to be quite frankly. I
Well,
actually
let
don't
me get
think.
to my full point. Let me get to my full
Mhm.
point.
Okay,
I'm
but
only halfway there. I'm 3/4 of the way there. Um, did the Jedi have to end? I mean,
no.
it's Palpatine had set things in motion that they were going to. and that the flaws would overtake the strengths. Um, and
But I don't
so,
think there are flaws, though. That's the thing. I don't think there are flaws. I don't.
I mean, okay, well, maybe we're not going to be able to agree with that because clearly that's the story George gives us and that's the thing is Qui-Gon dies because if he stays alive, maybe he is able to save the Jedi at that time. But
And you see, I
instead,
don't think that's the story George has given us, though.
he dies. But here's the thing: so Qui-Gon dies.
Mhm.
Uh, the story plays out as it does. But Qui-Gon, who had already, and was my original point, and I think you can agree with this, is he is um, such a great servant of the light, such a great servant of life,
Mhm.
that he's then able to come to Yoda even before Order 66, right?
Mhm.
But then certainly afterwards and say,
Mhm.
uh, okay, the Jedi were brought to their knees. The things that, I mean, the relationship with the Republic and how easy it was to be part of the Clone Wars. And I know you think, but just even I mean, what John Jackson Miller is going to talk about being so detached and apart and speculating on, how many angels Viego can dance on the head of a pin as opposed to what do the people need in the moment. And, we have the Martez sisters, for example, or, this example of
True, but
being
I think
so out
those
of
stories go
touch.
against George's vision, though. I think they're not what George had in mind.
What we do see is him going to Yoda and going to
Mhm.
Yoda afterwards and saying, okay, but here's how to do it, for all time in eternal life. And here's the implications of, of being a servant of the light. I mean, okay, I don't know about George. I mean, we know, again, there was a reason George kills Qui-Gon off. The story in the canon as a whole, including The Last Jedi, for example, including Clone Wars, which George had to play part in. Um, you know, again, the downward trajectory and then the upward trajectory, right?
Mhm.
Um, that that Qui-Gon is, and Obi-Wan, you strike me down, I'll be more powerful. You can imagine Qui-Gon is able to uh, influence, call more people to the light, even in his death, even in incorporating death into his own way of preserving life. So, yeah, I mean, maybe that's a whole other episode. We're gonna have to talk about, are they flaws or are they not? What did George intend? What did George say or not? Um, you know, clearly, the story we get is that the Jedi are in a position to be vulnerable to the Sith, to be vulnerable to Palpatine's plan. Um, that the Republic is marred by, baseless accusations of corruption, but they're not that baseless. Um, Ahsoka. I mean, this is a Dave, this is a George story. This is a Dave story. You know, I mean that's what Ahsoka's trial really represents is whatever, however, their own motivations, they are in a position where they have to go along, or they just do go along with what Palpatine wants. What Palpatine wants is Ahsoka to be convicted, so that Anakin can see, oh, that the Jedi are gonna rip uh, my loved ones away from me, even if it's Palpatine ripping my loved ones away from me. Yeah, they are victims. The Jedi are victims as much as everyone else. But anyway, Qui-Gon refuses to be a victim. That's the thing. He
Mhm.
refuses to say, you know, uh, yes, obviously he doesn't want Maul to stab him through the heart.
I don't
Nobody
know
wants
that.
that.
No.
But again, the story we get is for him to be out of the way. Again, that's again the story that George tells. It's a tragedy, and some of the tragic implications, as that Dave Filoni was referring to, right, in that behind the scenes thing. So anyway, the ultimate point though is, despite that, he can come back and he can be the one, because he isn't there, even though he isn't there, and it reveals him being gone, his absence reveals that Anakin has this struggle between light and dark, and the dark ultimately wins. That's the thing. If Qui-Gon's there, this is what Dave says, right? And learning from George, if Qui-Gon's there, uh, Anakin doesn't follow the dark side necessarily.
And I think
Um,
Dave's wrong, quite frankly.
Okay, maybe you do. Maybe he would have anyway. I mean, it is Anakin's responsibility. I'm trying to think of what your arguments are, but it. Anyways, the point ultimately is Qui-Gon, being the servant of the light, is able to come back and teach Yoda, and Yoda is able to teach Luke, and Luke's able to. Luke's able in Octo to sacrifice himself for life, and who knows what influence Qui-Gon will have further on. So anyway, I've spoken a lot. I know you have a lot that you think, but yeah, I mean, we have time to get into it.
I mean, for one thing, I actually do think Qui-Gon would have served in the Clone Wars. I think Qui-Gon's a loyal Jedi Knight through and through. Republic, Jedi, all that good stuff. Is he a rebel? Sure. I actually think, even George himself has said that.
Yeah.
That is true. I actually get some quotes right here about from George about, he's a rebel. I think in some ways he is kind of what mirrors Anakin in terms of, but the difference between Qui-Gon and Anakin obviously is Qui-Gon's able to do what Anakin never do, and that is let go and not be selfish.
Yeah.
So, he can actually do those things. So, there's that. But, also because he's able to find the Force Ghost power, because he learned it from a shaman of the Wills, apparently.
But why did the shaman actually reward him with that knowledge, right?
I would love to know that story. That's actually a good story.
No, I just explained it. Is because he is so committed to preserving life already. He's already won.
Oh yeah,
that's what I mean.
So that I agree with that for sure. Obviously, he's like trust Yoda with this knowledge because he's like, hey Yoda, you're probably gonna need this, because he's gotta,
you gotta train Luke, and he's gotta come back to Luke. This is, and again, I don't want to get into. I don't think we have time for the debate now, but he's saying to Luke, the greatest teacher of failure is.
Oh, that I agree with 100%.
Incorporate failure, incorporate death and loss, incorporate failure. Yeah.
Oh, exactly. I agree with that.
What I mean is, I think the failure he's thinking about is the failure to prevent Darth Sidious and the Empire.
I mean, how, I don't know what the Jedi honestly could have done differently.
Right. I mean, that's the counter argument. This is a 200-year trajectory. Including if we consider that that's part of what the High Republic is doing. Is a 200-year trajectory.
I think. Well, here's the question, I guess. Then, does George's intent actually matter? Then.
Well, no. I'm saying whatever.
If it doesn't, that's fine.
Not on the way other storytellers explore these things.
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm fine with that. Like, I don't care if they don't go with George's intent.
Yeah.
I just think it's like we have to pick. We have to decide. Like, okay, does what George say matter, or is like, has it gone beyond that at this point?
Right.
Which is fine with me. I'm 100% okay with that.
I mean, I think already, even with Jodie Hauser's one shot, Age of Republic. He was already. He was always suggesting. I mean, that's where I suggest that he wouldn't fight in the Clone Wars.
I mean, we'll never know because he didn't die.
Right, we'll never know, and that's also part of the point. Right, we'll never know.
But that's it. Well, I mean, that's the thing. Well, actually, let's actually talk a little about Dooku and Qui-Gon for a second. On the one hand, well, I mean, here's the thing about Dooku that people, I think, I think not us, but I think some people do hero worship him. But at the end of the day,
visionary. Sorry.
I mean, I love that line. But at the end of the day, did Qui-Gon know about the corruption in the Senate? Yes.
Yeah.
But if he saw what Count Dooku was doing, he'd be like, "Nah, man, you're dark side.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stick with the Republic." Because at the end of the day, Dooku is just a Sith Lord. At the end of the day, he's working with Sidious. I mean, we know this. We saw it in Tales of the Jedi.
Yeah.
He kills Yaddle.
Yeah.
He's already on gun ho with Sidious's machinations, and in the Revenge of the Sith novelization, he knows what the end game is, and that is the Empire. The Empire is the end game, and I don't, there's no way Qui-Gon would ever be behind that. I think that's a lie.
Would
Uh,
he have found a different way or found a different type of resistance? Maybe.
I mean, if the Empire got formed, Qui Gon would be head ho in the Resistance.
Yeah.
But I do think Qui Gon would have stayed with the Republic. I mean, I don't want to turn this into a Qui Gon would have stayed with the Republic debate, but
It's
I
a
do
good
generally,
question. I mean, there's
I
no
do,
good answer, but
I mean,
yeah.
I do generally think he's still a loyal Jedi through
Mhm.
and through. Disagreements doesn't mean you just leave the Order. I think he sticks with it,
Sure.
no matter what, and maybe hopes to maybe just keep temp it. But at the end of the day, it's like Palpatine probably got already
Mhm.
20 steps ahead of
Yeah.
what he needs to do.
I can see him. This is definitely a big tangent, but whatever.
Mhm.
We're done. We're done the notes. I can see him at first going along. I can see him getting fed up and worn down and saying this is just there continues to go against my convictions. There uh there are heroes on both sides, evil is everywhere. Yeah. And I think he might take the barrage of hour or just somehow say he can't. So I mean that's what Kirk Flood does, right?
I mean, maybe I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, that's one of those what if situations
Yeah.
where it's like,
Yeah,
what do
sure.
you, like, kind of, he certainly would have pushed his luck.
Mhm. Yeah.
But I do wonder. But
Yeah.
I mean, he is a loyal Republic Jedi servant. I mean, he
Yeah,
goes to Naboo when the Chancellor asked him,
sure.
"Hey," so it's like he believes in the Republic,
And
democracy.
he isn't completely averse to using violence at this point.
Oh, I mean, he
That's true.
managed to kill the guards.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's a little racist towards Jar Jar when he says the ability to speak does not give
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
intelligence.
And that might be one of the failures he reflects on. Who knows? Yeah, we have a few good questions here.
Oh, question.
This is
Yes,
this is a wider question. And this we did an episode sort of about this, George versus Dave, and the actual things that they've written and said.
I can send you a link to that on
Yeah,
the Discord.
yeah. And so yeah, what we mean is, yeah, I mean what George Lucas intended and what he wrote and what things he said about it versus everyone else, basically, and the current canon now that George has no say in it. Really, this is kind of what we mean. Yeah,
That's pretty much it. Yes.
yeah, um, yeah. Here's a good question.
Ooh,
Do you include Dooku?
questions.
I mean, I think that was the carrot. It was like, yeah, come with me, and you'll live forever. Join me. You'll have unlimited power. Of course, he was lying, but it's a good question. Did Sidious ever include Dooku with the immortality stuff? That's the question.
That's
I
a
mean,
good.
he was lying to Anakin too, really. I mean, that's not a life. He probably would have found someone younger and more powerful than Anakin.
I mean, that's what Cities always tries to do. It's like he always tried to find who's a better apprentice. Obviously, I think he did want Anakin for like, he's the chosen one. It's like, get the chosen one in my
Yeah.
pocket. Heck yeah! And obviously, Anakin was vital and strong before he got all burnt up and
Yeah.
crispy.
Mhm.
With Dooku, and I guess I'll even add Maul into this.
Mhm.
It's hard to say what he let other people know about. I mean,
Yeah.
because I mean, I think I'm gonna be honest. I'm going to lean on the side of no,
Mhm.
because Dooku and Anakin had different priorities. Anakin's priorities are my wife's dying and I don't want to lose her. I want to keep the people I love close.
Yeah.
So Palpatine's all like, the dark side, immortality is a thing.
Mhm.
This Plagueis guy. He was learning. He was doing the things.
Yeah.
With Dooku, it was always less of like I don't know what Dooku thought about immortality, especially early on. But I think he was more about the Republic is corrupt and they're senators, and we must weed out the corruption, and there has to be someone with a strong will and hand. And,
Yeah.
it's like he's like really we
There was
dogs.
also a thing of taking his family money.
That too, and his family money. But it's like
Yeah.
it's just like hey, I agree with you too, Dooku. Corruption. It sucks, man. All that corruption in the Senate, I hate it. I hate it. I'm Darth. Mr. Darth Sidious hates this corruption, but
Yeah.
you got the Force. I got the Force. Maybe us who see the world in a bigger light,
Hmm.
we enlightened beings, we could certainly
Yeah.
we can do something about this corruption, man. We can do something. It's gonna be hard. We might have to kill some people, but
Yeah.
we can do it. So I'm gonna say, I mean, whether or not Sidious let Dooku into like this immortality suck or this immortality stuff is just a side project for Palpatine himself, and like even Vader didn't know about Exegol. I mean,
Until he did. Until he found it.
until he did. So I'm gonna kind of like me and Show the Night Wolf. I'm gonna kind of lean on to no
Yeah, maybe.
myself, but it's like it's a light no. It's not like I maybe, but I don't think that's like Dooku's priorities in terms of
Yeah.
his initial fall before he gets really evil.
I see what you mean. I can see your point. It's possible. I think. Well, getting back to our conversation, it's going to be really interesting now that they've introduced this in Tales of the Jedi. They're Dooku and Qui-Gon on this planet. How Dooku has this motivation to root out corruption and to say, okay, these senators are lining their pockets while their people suffer. They're going to have to, the storytellers, if we get more stories about this, are going to have to say, okay, but he goes off the rails somewhere. And that's the thing, is we only get these shorts. So we don't quite know how he goes from, these senators are lining their pockets. Well, we don't know on screen, at least. How he goes from senators are lining their pockets to, I'm going to kill Yaddle. It's a little bit of
And I'm okay with an empire. It's just empire.
And I'm okay with a simp empire. I mean, Dooku Jedi lost, so that's the thing with Kevin Scott. It's the motivation is clearer. It's clearly, again, family money. The Jedi are keeping me from this. This is my daddy's gonna be proud of me by taking on the family name and the family money, all that motivation. It's interesting. I'd be curious to see how they square this, given that him and Qui-Gon are different characters. Qui-Gon wanted to root out corruption and stayed a loyal servant to the light. Dooku wants to root out corruption, but somehow fell to the dark. And it'll be.
Well, I mean, you already see the beginnings of selfishness, right? Like Qui-Gon's going, I want my family money too. I don't think he even cares about his family.
I mean, Dooku, yeah.
Yeah, but Dooku wanted his family money, and there's already the sense of selfishness and all the little things of the dark side.
Well, I mean, the reason is in the audio play.
Oh yeah,
there is this motivation of the stern father, and that plays into it. But yeah, it's
road to hell is paved with good intentions, as they say.
I mean, so is the road to heaven, but that's all another thing.
But
that's actually my point with Qui-Gon, right?
Right. He gets to go to heaven.
Even if he doesn't win, doesn't actually do always do the right action, he's turning to the light because it is the light.
Right. And I mean, also, to kind of go back to Qui-Gon and kind of root this back into death, I feel like people really overhype the whole Qui-Gon hates the Jedi Order because he disagrees with them. Because if he why is he then telling Yoda? It's like, hey Yoda,
oh my God.
We might have disagreed a lot on the council, but I trust you more than anything with this knowledge of immortality because I think you deserve this, man.
If he hated the Jedi Order, he would have just left. If he didn't care, he wouldn't say anything. I mean, if you love something, you want it to be better,
right? Although, I'm sorry for making this tangent. But I just thought of this and I want to think it now before I forget. Maybe Qui-Gon would have left, and Palpatine would have been happy about that. It's like, okay, one of Anakin's supports gone, Ahsoka gone, Obi-Wan split up, Anakin's by himself. Showtime. Time to go dark. Time
kind of what happened anyway, right?
Right. So I mean, there's a universe out there where Qui-Gon has to fight Anakin too, in a sense. I mean, he's not force ghosting Vader in Mustafar's castle, going. He's kind of. Maybe. I mean, that'd be cool.
That wouldn't do anything, and so I don't know if the.
But he's going to Obi-Wan, like, hey Obi-Wan, yeah, you now finally believe in me. Good, let's get going. I'm just trying to teach you the Force Ghost stuff. One more thing about Force Ghosts. Now that I'm kind of thinking about it, I don't think they ever need to explain how they operate, but it is interesting that in Legends, at least in Tim Zahn's novel, Heir of the Empire, so the
Mhm.
first thing, they treat the Force ghosts like actual ghosts. Like
Mhm.
they're on this like last mission. In fact, like Obi-Wan appears in Heir of the Empire,
Interesting.
and he's like, Luke, I am leaving you forever to return to the Force because my task is finished. The Emperor and Vader are dead, and you have done it. And now it's like, now it's time to train the new Jedi, and I'm going to go away forever.
Mhm.
Compared to where in canon, clearly Yoda, Obi-Wan, you and
Yeah.
Anakin get to show up and, help out Luke
Mhm.
every now and then. And, obviously Anakin, we get some Force Ghost atonement in deaths, which I
Yes.
had in notes, but I didn't mention, but that's nice
Yeah.
too. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Ahsoka season 2. That's
yeah.
interesting. Both Ahsoka season Kenobi and Ahsoka season 1 end with these Force ghosts coming back.
Mhm.
Like I forgot to mention, yeah, Qui-Gon comes back and as a Force ghost. I mean, we know he does eventually, but yeah.
Right. He's like, I was always here, Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
You just were not ready to see.
Mhm.
Like we have a lot to do. I love those final moments with Qui-Gon
Yeah.
and Obi-Wan. It just feels so good.
Yeah.
I love Qui-Gon.
Fun times.
But let's see any good things here before we wrap up.
I mean, I think that's about it. Oh yeah.
Yep. Yep. So, death. We talked about death. Death in Star Wars. From the theology to the plot to the fun. Not fun, but
I mean,
sad,
interesting tangents. Yeah.
some interesting tangents. We'll have to do a Qui-Gon episode.
Yes.
I love Qui-Gon anyway, so that's going to be a fun time.
Maybe around May when 25 years TPM
Ooh,
25.
that'd actually be some fun. We should do some Phantom Menace centric
Well,
episodes in
we
May.
better.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
No. Yeah. I
So
mean,
yeah.
it's interesting. One last thing I'll say about this, even though I got the other ticker down. Like, talk about death, but we're talking about the meaning of life and the purpose, the meaning of our lives.
Mhm.
And that's the thing. Speculation about death is always about that. It's always really about what our lives mean. And
Mhm.
so,
Mm.
because, the word end means, we do this in English, but Greek especially does this, is something coming to an end, but also the end, as in the purpose. What is your end? To what end are you doing this? To what end are you living? And that's, yeah, I mean, that's the point of Lent, is to ask that question. To what end are you living your life? So that's a great point to wrap things up. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks for all the great chats in the comments and the questions in the comments. If you have more thoughts, more comments, please do feel free to comment below. These boxes aren't going anywhere. They'll still be there. We can't respond to them in the moment, but we can respond to them when we can get to them. Please do give this channel a follow, give this video a like, give this channel a subscription, and give this video a like if you haven't done so already. Please do share, let us know, and share widely. Spread the word. Got the eye on Canon. Jill, where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me at course at JID2021, again JID2021 on Twitter, and of course at the Ion. Ooh, sorry, I was looking outside.
Yeah.
At Ion Cannon Pod. No, I'm sorry, I was looking at the car outside,
Oh,
going
shit.
really fast for a few seconds. At the Ion Cannon Pod on Twitter, where I have been very active with our fellow podcast friends and fans. And if you look at the Twitter right now, you will see a very exciting looking book that's going to hopefully come out in July. Which I'm looking forward to.
We should
Quite
talk
a
about
lot.
that in news next week. We'll get
Yes,
to
if we have,
put that in.
if we have
Yes.
some time. So
Yeah.
yes, you can follow us there, and of course, you can always catch us on the Star Wars Underworld Discord, where I will be posting stuff. In fact, this actually reminds me. When I get off, I'm going to be posting. I'll post an old video I did for my job at Culture Slate, where I actually wrote a script on what would have happened if Qui-Gon had lived
Oh,
past
so you do have
episode
this
1.
answer. Great.
I wrote like a what if situation that weirdly also still the same events happen. So yeah, I'll put that there.
That tracks. Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram and Threads at MNEUG1138, Twitter at NEUG485, and of course at Iron Cannon Pod, EYEONCANONPOD on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. I don't like that view.
Oopsie, sorry. Sorry, what happened there? Whoops. I pushed the wrong button.
That's okay.
We were very close.
Yes.
Did not.
Yes. And of course, Tractor Beam on this Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, where, among other things, we're talking about Bad Batch, but usually we talk about comic book reviews.
Which ones are these? Which comics are we doing?
It's just ongoing number 43 this
Ooh,
week.
nice.
So,
Exciting.
Charles in charge of our days and our lives. So check that out right here on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, and of course Iron Cannon Twitch and Twitter as well. And of course check out the flagship podcast on all these places, just the Underworld versions of them. Thursday 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, for a probably more in-depth, longer breakdown of the Bad Batch episodes, as they do there. It's always a good time. Next week, episode 100. And we're gonna celebrate the milestone. This was 99, Order 99, Bad Batch, Clone Force 99, episode 100. We're gonna talk about The Last Jedi again because we wanna. Why not? And then
We're going to talk about it in full this time, not
yes,
just
we're gonna-
sparsely.
Yes, we're gonna just go into it. We've probably done episodes on that before, but we're gonna just dive in again because we want to. Nothing special marking episode 100, but we'll do. We might do some other things further down the line. We'll see some special things there. And yeah, keep it locked. Check out some changes. We'll announce some bigger changes afoot, hopefully coming down the pipe. But yeah, until then, keep it locked here on the Tractor Beam and on Flagship and on the Iron Cannon podcast. Same bat time. Same with those bats in Quest for the Hidden City. Those bat characters. Same Minoc time, same Minoc channel. Mondays, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Until then, Joel, let's blow this thing and head home.